Hey everyone, we're back with another conversation, and I'm happy to have as my guest a longtime collaborator, Dr. Lau Cher Han, and he was the lead. Correct me if I'm wrong. The lead instigator of the Coronatracker initiative, which was highly acclaimed, one of the first, if not the first, multi country effort to track the COVID pandemic. And well, the tool is still up and running, but I don't know how updated it is. But yeah, anyway, over to you, Dr. Lau. Maybe a brief introduction to our audience. What's your background and what have you been up to?
Sure. Thank you, Dominic. Dr. Lau here. So my background is in artificial intelligence, machine learning in natural language processing. So I did my PhD back in 2006. So to give you guys a bit of context, that was the time where Facebook, Twitter all started to, turn into like a unicorn
Marketing.
to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before that, all the academic research was about long documents. So what difference that Google has made is you can just input a very short text, right? 2, 3 keywords, and Google is able to return you some amazing long form articles, documents, results. So that's what amazed people. But ever since Twitter and Facebook came out, it sort of like disrupt the plan because everybody starts to write short text, short messages, and now you have a problem because short texts are a lot noisier. But the
Yeah.
the the good side is from information retrieval point of view is that the sentiments is so rich, right? If you read a news articles, maybe the information is rich in the sense that whatever you want to find is always there, but there are a lot of that you are not sure what the author is trying to tell you unless you do some sort of analysis. And from a data point of view is that short text is a lot better because it has a strong sentiment, strong opinions, and whatever you want to find is always there. So I think that also fast forward 16 years later is also formed the basis of the chat-based LLM and GPT kind of model. So it form a good training data sets for those. So a little bit of my background, and I do a lot of training as well. So I help to grow data scientists and help companies to, well, quote unquote, digitally transform their databases into something that's useful.
Yeah, you've been in the training gig for some time. Have you noticed any like evolution or change since you started? And we were just talking offline about how data science is maybe just a rebranded something else like data mining, predictive analytics.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember KDD, knowledge
of course.
discovery from
Yeah, yeah,
databases. So I
yeah.
mean, any thoughts on how, this thing has evolved?
I can sort of say that I have witnessed the entire evolution from the what do you have that when we have Lotus Notes back then is KM, right? It first started off with knowledge management, so that's
Yeah.
where Lotus Notes it was a thing, and then we evolve into something like wiki. So we have like tagging, social taggings, and so it's always the structured versus unstructured, and in between we have something like ontology. So on one hand, we're trying to go wild as well as we can, try to label something, and then on the other hand, there's always this invisible hand trying to say, no, you have to follow what I'm saying, right? This is an ontology dictionary base. So when it comes to consumer side, there's go back to the war between Yahoo and Google because there's this guy at Yahoo say that no, everything has to be a directory, so you have to search information this way. I help you to organize things, but then Google kind of said, no, I help you to find whatever you want. And then after wikis, then we have all those things that we have now. But from the I would say training point of view, is kind of like people still stuck in the same way because not many people really try to understand what is the purpose of search because there are
Mhm.
different modes, right? There are exploratory and then there are discovery. And nowadays, I think with what ChatGPT has enabled us to do is explanatory. So I personally believe that that will be the future of information retrieval. So like what Dominic just said, right? KDD is knowledge discovery, but then we have IR, then we have information retrieval, and before we finally see or witness what quantum physics can do, this thing is going to stay. Right? We are going to have a good time enjoying all the benefits of explanatory data analytics.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as a professional starting out in analytics, it's interesting how part of the journey is really tool driven. So I'm sure
Yep.
you've seen before it was what SPSS, SAS,
Yep.
obviously SQL, and then now it's mostly Python this, Python that, R a little bit. Um, in terms of in terms of supply and demand, because
Yep.
you're obviously you're based in Malaysia. How is the market for data professionals in Malaysia, and how has it changed over the years?
I think the people here, they didn't really understand what are the potential career path that they can aim for. For example, right, the ideal career progression plan from a traditional data guy to a modern data guy, let's say from starting from the network engineering side. I studied diploma in computer networking, so I got my CCNA, those sort of stuff. So
Mhm.
I fully understand TCP/IP and then how to calculate subnet mask, VNet, that sort of stuff. So if you are somebody who came from that sort of background and then you want to survive, or you want to, I don't know, morph into a data guy so that you can speak to other people in data science terminologies, I think data engineer is a good opportunity, because I would say 60-70% of the knowledge can be borrowed from network engineer, database admin, and
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and then you turn it into a new job, rather than just standing there and hang on to whatever, DB admin stuff that you have been doing. And for analysts, it's a bit tricky, because most of the people in Malaysia, even in Singapore, I have some clients in Singapore as well. I can't talk much about Indonesia or other markets because we haven't really explored that. But Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, these are the markets that I'm relatively more familiar. And analyst is an interesting one, because for those people who are in the scene, they don't really consider themselves as a data analyst, because they would think
Hmm.
that data analyst is just a, I don't know, more expensive version of business analyst. So they sort of like, they don't talk to each other much. And then business analysts will look at data analysts like, come on, you're just somebody who use Excel better than me, or you can draw some fancier charts. That's all. But I can write, I can do better PowerPoint presentation. So that's really what they talk to each other inside their heart. But people outside the world, they think that there's only this position called data analyst, which is um, um 50, 60, 70% of the time they're wrong. Because let's say you go into oil and gas industry, the data analyst there is doing totally different thing when you compare to someone who is doing data analyst. They might share the same job title, but someone who is doing data analyst in a retail or e-commerce shops, right, e-commerce platform, even their job scope is totally different. The type of data that they're handling, the amount of data they're handling, and that sort of decisions that they need to make is totally different. For someone who is from a more relatively traditional industry like construction, oil and gas, their data analysis is to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
for somebody
Exactly.
who is in the e-commerce, or who is in like relatively more techy, right? They want to make sure that they always find something that's new and interesting. Is if nothing goes wrong, means something is wrong. That they are looking for innovative solutions. They want to do product recommendations. They want to do sentiment analysis, yada yada, and so on.
In terms of is it what you just said brought something to mind. Like I remember when obviously data science started to become popular like post 2012, 2013 when
Yep.
the first article came out. And I noticed that prior to that time, if I remember correctly, most people doing analytics were really coming from a commercial background, like
Yep.
you worked in a bank or something, and usually tool based, Oracle, whatever, SAS, IBM. And then after data science, we started to get more, I would say, academics coming in
Yep.
from, more pure science fields. And I think that's where a lot of the conflict started because the academic professionals,
Yeah.
they're used to open source, they're used to non-commercial tools, while the kind of the commercial people had their standards. So how did you experience this in Malaysia, and how did you see it kind of coming together? Because I think overall open source has, I think, won the game, and even the big vendors we were just talking about, IBM, offline, they had to adapt, I think. So did you see this happen in your space?
So I have a very com- complex, complicated background, because I'm from academic, right? Because of my qualifications, I got a PhD, and then when I left Australia and came back to Malaysia, I worked in the government sectors a lot because back then, in developing country, you know this well, right? Most of the time, if you want something to happen, you have to use the force driven by either a large company, which we don't have a large tech company here, right? Okay, most of the Southeast Asia companies we don't have, like the biggest one that you can think of are like Grab or Shopee, that sort of tech companies. But in a way, they are not really tech company. They are just large enough to and use tech to power their business, so
Right.
to speak. Not 100% correct politically, but you get the idea. And then I also run my own startup, so I speak to a lot of industry people and B2B, B2C. So I have no choice but to speak directly to the customers if I want something to happen. Because as if you run a tech startup, you, let's say, even if I develop a very small tool, right, just help people to organize their calendar, for example, I have to speak to the customers or users directly. So I come from a very mixed background. So I sit on both sides or three sides of the table all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what makes me still very happy and enjoy about what I'm doing now, because at any point of time I can go to the other side and say something that surprise them and interest them, and yeah, anytime, easily. And when I was in Australia, we have already seen that, because Australia is a very service-based country when it comes to economics. So we have like those sort of mining companies. So we have Rio Tintos, we have all those, and a lot of power company, electric company, because their main business is to sell those minerals and natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to business, it's typical Western style of business. So you have a huge conglomerates or monopolies that they take control of, let's say, retail, like supermarkets, shopping malls, etc. And so their analysis is to make sure that they find companies, or they find businesses that fit their requirements. Again, right, there aren't too much room for innovation, at least from a using data point of view. But then when we come back here, I first joined an organization called Magic that's supposed to push the initiative and to grow more tech startups in Malaysia.
In
So
Malaysia, yeah.
yeah, in Malaysia, and then hopefully we can push them to scale out and grow to the Southeast Asia level. So for those people who didn't know, Grab, it was originally a Malaysian company. Yeah. So and then we until today we still don't have Gojek. Yeah, that's a funny thing, because it's supposed to do well in Malaysia, but it is apparently it's doing quite well in Singapore. And then those are the two sides. So the government side, and then the business side, and then now the academic side as well. So all those tools that you mentioned, they basically do one thing, right? They go around to universities and knock on their door, say, hey, I got this tool, I'm from SAS, I want to sponsor your students with these certifications, and I'm going to build a lab or center of excellence here. I mean, the universities wouldn't say no. It just depends on who came first and who proposed a better deals. But when it comes to market shares, the open source guys always win. It's just that they often don't win in a monetary sense. So for example, Linux, right, or Linux, it is definitely the largest, has the largest user base, including MySQL. Look at the number of transactions they process every day versus Oracle, Postgres, and MS SQL. But when we talk about the money that they have as a brand, or that sort of, they definitely help more people make more money than those proprietary software. That this is for sure. But it's very hard for us to quantify any of these open source initiatives to be like the most valuable brand, or because they are not even a brand even. Yeah. So I think that's my sentiment right now.
In terms of the now, okay, let's come up to more current events. Obviously, we went to the pandemic, we did the Coronatracker, and then
Yeah.
just as the pandemic was sliding out, very excellent timing. Now we have generative AI come in
Yeah.
just recently. So, how did you how did you see this new trend? Is it a new trend? And second, how do you see it changing kind of the landscape for people studying data science or analytics or the practice of it?
For us, I mean, at least we were lucky to be the guy who sparked the ideas, and we managed to build and productize. We you know me, right? When we first started, I never thought of any monetization or exit plan. Just let's see how things go, because at that time they were filled with uncertainties. But I know that, you know, this thing is going to be a catalyst that accelerates a lot of those, like for example, cashless payment. And when cashless payment take off, then it will generate a lot of transactions, that sort of things. From a business point of view, there's definitely something that we would love to see. But from the generative AI point of view, especially ChatGPT, it's not something that is neither a black swan event nor something that we at our level we can predict that this thing will take off. I'm sure that at that time Elon Musk and Sam Altman, they were just saying that, okay, now we have this thing called GPT, what are we going to do with that? All right, let's build a chatbot around it. It seems like that's the easiest thing to do, you know, the so-called low hanging fruit. And then it become a hit now. Other than that, um I made a few correct bets. So if I were to give an advice to people, right? You can't predict what's going to happen. I mean, the best way to predict the future is you work on it. But you do have the ability, and if you try enough different things, you should be able to say no to those things that look fancy. For example, in my case, when I first involved in data science, DJ Patel coined the term. That was when big data and data science, they were fighting for attention. I'm sure that you remember that time, right? So company like IBM, Watson, Teradata, Snowflakes, Segment, they're fighting for people, trying to convince companies that, hey, you need a big data platform. And even for smaller companies, they can afford, but they don't really need it. Then they will tell them, I'm not referring to any particular vendors, but the sales pitch is always that, your data is going to grow and big data will help you to do a lot more things. But all they are looking at is just the structured data level, basically just more rows, more columns. That's all. If not even more columns, most of the time it's just more rows. Because if they were selling the benefits of having more columns in data science point of view, at least we are having more features, right? We're encouraging you to collect more features, but no, you're just encouraging them to collect more data. So if your model works well with 1 million rows of data, your model won't get any significantly better if you have 10 million rows, right? And one order of magnitude better. Yeah, so that's the thing. And so I make the right choice to say, no, I think big data is not really going to help the SMEs here. So I opt for data science. And then when I do data science a few years, and suddenly this thing called blockchain came out, and they realized that, oh, come on, I can't use the big data route. So they try another B, right? B for big data. Now they go with blockchain, and they try to tell people that, oh, your data is not secure. And on the other hand, you're telling people that, no, your data is you should open source. Openness is the best way to defend yourself. I don't know how they get that sort of sales pitch, but I heard that before. I said the best way is to let everybody know what is going on, so everybody can watch that, and nobody can steal or hack it. In a way, I don't know who bought the idea. I'm sure that some people bought it, right? And then I made the right bet. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to promote this thing. It's too expensive, and it's not environmental friendly. Like, come on, look at that sort of computational power to put into blockchain. Luckily, somebody did divert those sort of computational power to AI, and that's where we are today. Yeah, so I think sharing a bit of advice, not to say advice, but my personal experience here is that if you're thinking what to do, maybe you should start thinking or not what to do, because every opportunity presented it looks good, but not always.
Actually, in this, you mentioned data engineering earlier.
Yeah.
That thing has also evolved, right? Like for the longest time, I guess the gospel, quote unquote, being preached was oh, you have to integrate all your data, you have to do the third normal form, put it in a warehouse, etc., etc. I mean, I was in Teradata myself, so I was part of that.
Yeah.
And then when I don't know if you feel the same way, when the data science movement started, there was a shift away from that proper way of organizing data, because these data scientists, they come equipped with just Python notebooks, load everything on CSV and then do your models. So obviously there's this gap between these two professionals. And then suddenly, or not suddenly, over time there are these new terms like data fabric, data mesh, all
Yeah, yeah,
these
yeah.
things.
Data
Data
lake
lake,
house.
lake
I
house,
don't know.
whatever, right? How do you see all of this? Is this also similar to data science, just as another rebranded data warehousing, or is there really a new paradigm that's emerging?
For data engineering, that's a bit tricky because data lake does change a lot of things when we have unstructured data. So before that, actually, unstructured data is not really the right term as well. It's only for text data, right? Because we haven't solved the problem of storing videos, audios effectively in terms of storage and retrieval. I mean, if we just look at storage, it's not just about metadata, because the limitation of whatever technologies that we use right now, even if we look at the generative AI for images, for audios, and so on, they might look impressive, but they are still based on one thing, that is the context around it. That means if we look at the picture, and the reason why you understand this picture is because you gathered enough texture information that describe this picture. So you can't just look at the count or distribution of the pixels and then you send. Oh, yeah, in some cases you can, for example, like detect skin tone, detect scenery. That's sort of simple use cases. We already can do that. But if you look at the actual use cases outside of GAN, like drawing those NFTs alike pictures, most of the deep learning tutorials are still telling us that the first thing that you should do is to learn how to differentiate, teach a computer how to differentiate cats and dogs, for example. And then that goes back to the data engineering. So I think the one that the real enabler is that you now allow people to store unstructured data in a more efficient way, so to speak, because back then we can only do indexing, right? We can just calculate the number of times this appear, and then but when we have embeddings, we are sort of like we are able to model the relationships between the words. But apart from that, my sentiments on data engineering is exactly the same as how SSD has saved Microsoft from the registry hell. It's just that the evolution, the advancement in hardware miraculously solved the problem of a crappy software.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, so Microsoft Windows 10, Windows 11 did not really solve the problem of registry. It's just that, oh, SSD SSD came out, and yep, problem solved. Let's move on.
yeah, I mean that brings to, I guess, context this new trend on generative AI. Obviously, everyone is dependent, well, for the most part, dependent on these publicly available tools like,
Yeah.
ChatGPT, Bing, Google Bard. So that means, in a way, it's kind of like cloud all over again. We got locked into a monopoly, and only because it can be very taxing on the hardware to train a large language model from scratch. You're an NLP background. How do
Yeah.
you see this? Is this really actually the truth, or is there ways around this, or how do you see this developing over time now that people are more aware of it?
So for those of you who are watching this, right, I can throw you another question for you to think about, which is quite provocative in a way that even without or before ChatGPT, all this, right? Has anyone ever thought of, oh, come on, let's gather all the customers' feedback email and then train a language model to predict their sentiments? I bet most people, they don't do, right? It's not that expensive to do that. Even until today, it's a lot cheaper to do that. You can do it on a Mac Mini, for example, right? But people still don't do that. So I don't think computational power is is the main reason that people don't do it. But of course, now with ChatGPT, all those people see the possibility that, oh, okay, my chatbot used to be that dumb, now is sort of become smarter. But then when we really ask the customers, like, so do you really want to upload all your transaction data for the past 3 to 5 years onto this, whatever you call it, like ChatGPT or the llama or whatever engine, then most of them, they were like, let me think twice. But when you ask them to really, then we can go ahead and ask them and say, I can build this locally for you, right? I can train this for you, but would you really want to spend the money? So again, it goes back to that loop, and they don't really want to spend the money. So whether you are asking them for 20,000, 200,000 or 2 million just to train their data, is because ChatGPT currently is charging you $20 per month, so that a lot of people were willing to try. And for those people like myself or you and I, we have been heavily relying on ChatGPT. It doesn't really make our life any easier. It does make our life better in a sense that now if I were to think of a YouTube topic, I can ask ChatGPT and have a brainstorming session with it, with him, with her. But if you want to rely on ChatGPT to come up with a YouTube script for you, no, that's a fat hope. Yeah, totally impossible. And in fact, with ChatGPT, before that, with Google or other search engines, I only have to do search and a little bit of fact check. Now with ChatGPT, I have to do fact check all the time because everything we say it counts. Yeah.
Actually, what that brings to mind, obviously, one of the big concerns with large language models is the fake news or the disinformation. And a lot of it has to do with the way it works, right? It's not like a search engine that retrieves records. It actually creates records based on, probabilistic patterns. But I think people they don't really think about that. They just treat it like another Google or a sort of
That's
a
right.
better Google.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's going to be eventually a problem for us. Or have you experienced, talking to business users about using large language models? It feels like kind of a mixed bag. In the public domain, everyone's using it in school, but in
Yeah.
businesses, it's kind of 50-50, at least from where I sit. What do you think of that?
In Malaysia, I think it's going to be lower. So apart from those concerns, like whether they want to upload their data or not, right? That's one thing. But if you really ask them like, what is the use case that, or what are the use cases that you can think of when using integrating ChatGPT into a workflow, most of them they don't have a clue, right? To me, they know that to me, their company internal processes is like a black box to them, to most of the people. So if you work in a very large corporation, everybody plays a role as a nuts and bolts in a big, well-oiled, well-rigged machine, so to speak. But if you work in a smaller company, everything is just a black box. In startups, you throw something on the trailer board, somebody eventually will know that this thing is severe enough to pick up and solve the problem. And so ChatGPT or any sort of large language model is not going to help you with that. But for certain industry, let's say like creative industry, and those people who knows how to evaluate the value of a piece of product. Let's say like when I run Facebook ads, I don't hire a copywriter to just sit down there, talk to me and try to figure out an ads anymore. I can just ask ChatGPT to produce 10, 20 ads and go to Canva to pick the right images. Okay, done. Submit to Facebook ads manager and let the ads run and let the data tells me what to do next. So uh, speaking from probability or whatever normal distribution, Gauss distribution, they will always be 2 to 3 ads that's running very well, and there's another, most of the ads will not do well, and some of them will perform terribly. It's just that you don't know which is which. So I just let those that perform well to continue to run, and then I add more budget, and then remove the rest of it, and then generate another set of ads 3 to 5 days later. So this thing has significantly reduced the cost, not just the monetary cost, but it reduce the time, reduce the manpower, etc. So these are something that I see a lot of, like you say, right, in public domain, people are using it. But when it comes to a business themselves, no, I haven't really seen any businesses that is so excited to come to me, hold my hand, say, Doctor, you must help me integrate ChatGPT in my company, in my organization. Yeah, the company is going to rely on that. No. Yeah.
Actually, I found that interesting as well. That remember in the past, the most recent trends like metaverse, Web3,
Yeah.
blockchain, everyone was so positive about it, like hype driven.
Yeah, I don't know where they get were they
And
high on something? Yeah.
yeah, but to compare in AI, everyone's so negative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everyone's about jobs, cheating and uh fake news. So do you see that as a is that a good thing or a bad thing that we're a bit more skeptical, a bit more negative about AI as opposed to kind of the blockchain hype, which is completely the opposite. Everyone's so gung ho about crypto, and then it's been years. I haven't. Well, I don't think there's really a use case for it beyond cryptocurrency or maybe NFTs, which is also a kind of a weird thing. How do you feel about that?
I'm with you. I mean, until now, even to me, cryptocurrency is not a really valid use case to me either. It's like, because you compare it with fiat currencies, there are so many. I don't know call it disadvantages or flawed by design. Yeah. So even if we take it to how do I put it in words, like a perfectly rational world, right? Cryptocurrency still won't work, in my opinion. Yeah, of course, a lot of people will not agree, or maybe they are not the audience of our channel after all. But when we look at AI, I think is they are. It's not so much about loss aversion. I mean, I did not fear monger anybody by telling them that, hey, you have to come to take my AI course. If not, AI is going to replace you. And I always tell people that AIs will replace three types of jobs. Number one is those jobs that is highly repetitive, but on the software side, like, because some people, okay, some gurus, they will say, oh, AI will replace jobs that is repetitive. For example, I don't know, like ATM tellers, those sort of things. I said, no, those are replaced by machines. You don't mix up with machines and AI, right? And the other thing is they are only replacing those things there's more software driven. Like, for example, you don't want to reply so many emails that's using, oh, hi, nice meeting you, Dominic, cheers, best regards, here's my link. And the second one is the creative side. So people always think that creativity is something that cannot be replaced by AI. That's, again, I find it very amusing in a way that if you talk about words, an article, it's just ChatGPT has shown you it's just permutation and combination. And music is the same thing. Do re mi fa sol la si do. You just play around with it with different octaves, whatever, and then it came out as a song. And then you can adjust the number of beats, etc. And so there's not that much value. Like, you go to if I don't have Mid Journey, I can still go to Envato Elements and download hundreds of stock photos with just $20 per month. Same thing, right? The dollar to dollar comparison. It's just that now with Mid Journey, I can do a lot more things in much shorter times, and I can customize it instead of putting in keywords. Now I have to put in more prompts, a better prompts. That's all. And the last one is actually the fault tolerance, because there are a lot of, I think AI is going to replace those jobs that the fault tolerance level is very low. For example, judge, lawyers, accountants, and surgeon, like doctors. GPs, maybe they're still safe for a couple of years, because at least they have to diagnose and listen to what the patient says. But for surgeon, if this guy is confirmed with they have to remove the appendix, then it's confirmed, right? It's a standard procedures you have to follow, and then you have to have high level of precisions and very low level of fault. And for example, like delivering a baby, same thing, right? When it's time the baby is due, you have to follow the same procedure. So these are the things that I think AI can do well, and radiologists as well. You basically just look at X-rays and find out where are the white spots and try to identify what are those white spots. Yeah, and that's about it. So these three types of jobs will be replaced by AI eventually. Other than that, I think most of the jobs are still fine. Like, for example, cutting hair, maybe not your hair, my hair, like not hairstylists, like
Barbers.
barbers, right? Barbers will be replaced. Maybe not, because they are highly repetitive. They don't have much creativity. I mean, you don't want your barbers for a male haircut. I don't want them to be any more creative. Same like a surgeon. You don't want to go to a surgeon and say, all right, today let's try perform a surgery in a different ways, right? No, you don't want to do that. And For my haircut, I have very low level of fault tolerance as well. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they will be replaced, right? By AI. What sort of AI is that? Yeah. So the AI can replace those things like visually help you to visualize how your hair looks like if you change to a different color, different style. Yes, but yeah, in the fashion industry, that's all they can do for now. Yeah.
It's all mostly content related, right? Like,
Yes, correct. That's
text.
right.
I'm wondering though, let's go back to analytics. How do you think the analytics profession or jobs will get impacted, if they will, by, this generative AI? Because I've heard not many, but at least once saying that eventually ChatGPT will take over data analytics. But so not
I'm
necessarily
sure
I'm
that
not
they say
necessarily
that
not
just
necessarily
because
sure I agree.
just because ChatGPT show them that they can generate a few lines of Python code, and then they start to panic probably. But I like what you have said. Just I pick up the keyword is all content based. So if I combine that your question and content based, right? So anything that is content based in the analytics industry will
Mhm.
be easily replaced. For example, right? Right now, you still need a business analyst to look at a set of data to ask business question, although most of the time these questions are tied to two things: how to help the company to increase revenue or how to help the company to reduce costs. I don't think
Mm.
there's another third um, type of questions there, unless you are working for some other organizations, which I don't want to name it. You help people to look good, right? Some organizations, they don't care about their profits, they don't care about their losses, but they have enough money to sustain. You just want to look good. And other than that, these are the two or three types of possible use case when it comes to business analysts. And after that, right, data analysts, a lot of time the analytical process that they follow is very linear. And what ChatGPT is good is they're good at non-linear stuff. It's a non-linear
Mm,
process,
mm.
right? If you just want to know which quarter has the highest sales, which product is the best seller, which product is the worst seller, come on. You don't need ChatGPT to tell you to do that. You just need some sort of SOP. But most of the people, they don't do that. You just, okay, let's do it this way, select stuff from table, and then yeah, order by ascending, descending. That's all. Right. And SQL is the best investment in my life because I learned it 30 years ago, and I'm still happily talking
Still
about it.
usable, right?
Still
Despite all
usable,
of the
yeah. And the two languages there's a gives me the highest ROI is SQL and JavaScript. Yeah.
JavaScript, not Python, actually, more of
Because
JavaScript.
Python came a lot later, and I actually picked up Ruby first because of Ruby on Rails.
Right.
And then only I moved to Python. But it's never too hard to learn Python.
Mm,
Yeah, and I
mm.
find it hard for most people to pick up R is because of the notation. It's not so much about the programming paradigm or anything. The logic is the same, right? The hardest thing, speaking from experience, for most people, to pick out like a programming concept is always the loop. Yeah, once they figure out what is loop, like it's only loop, if else, and yeah, with modern programming language, you don't really have to worry too much about the data structure as well, because it's literally just numbers or text or boolean, right? Yes and no. Because last time we used to have to worry about them because of the storage, but efficiency, etc. But nowadays you don't have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Then come back to the business analytics or data analytics with AI or ChatGPT. Yeah. So if they continue to use that sort of standard workflow just to present a chart to tell people that, all right, this is very descriptive in the descriptive analytics. Yeah, they will be replaced by AI very soon because the script is always the same. It's just a template cookie cutter. It's just that whether it's done by a well-trained certified Tableau developer, or yeah, ChatGPT or some other language models.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you mentioned is interesting about, the intersection of content and analytics.
Yeah.
And in terms of ROI, right? In terms of skills, communication is one of the best returns in addition to some technical skill. So in the AI era, is that something that will continue to be relevant, or is it really more about automation and, getting things done more efficiently, which may not even need communication? So I mean, just maybe two. That's probably two schools of thought. What do you think?
No, I think that is a good question, because to me, every time when some innovation happens, I'm not sure, have you watched or read a book by Rory Sutherland, the
No.
Ogilvy guy? I'll
Yeah.
send you the link later.
Yeah.
So every time when an innovation happens, there's always three dimensions. So it's either physically, biologically, or psychologically. And most of the time, we focus too much on the physical side, and then we focus too little on the psychology side. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if I were to go from, I'm not very familiar with Manila cities anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you go from point A to point B, right? The time taken on the a bus ride is an hour.
Okay.
And you feel that the journey is long, not because of the journey is long, because the journey is boring. Even if you sit on this is a study that they have done before. Even if you sit in if you take a lift, right, and a 1 minute 60 seconds in the lift with a stranger, you feel like it's forever. You don't know what to do. That's way before you have mobile phones that you can look at.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they start to install mirrors and they put some posters inside to solve the problem. So that is a psychological solutions to physical solution, because you can't compress any further. The time taken from point A to point B is, if it's that long, or it take you from first floor to the fifth floor. If it's 1 minute, then it's 1 minute. You, of course, you can compress it into 10 seconds maybe, but the cost will be very high. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in some other cases, you can't compress them anymore. For example, if I were to send you a handwritten mail, a snail mail, 50 years ago, I don't know, it might take 2 weeks at least, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 months before we have planes. But nowadays, when I want to send a mail to you, an email to you, the time it takes is 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't
Split
compress
second.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
split second. So you can't compress it anymore. So if you want to solve that sort of problems, then it has to go psychological. And then go back to business context, right? If we are able to automatically produce dashboard anymore, doesn't mean that data analysts, business analysts are going to lose their job. No, because the same charts, you can tell hundreds or thousands of story. To these particular stakeholders, to this supervisor, a spike in HR, the attrition rate. That means if a lot of people resign, maybe it's a good thing because they're trying to cut costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your boss will be happy. But for somebody who's managing the team, they're like, shit, why is my team,
Yeah.
I lost half of my team members. How am I going to keep up with my sales results and productivity, whatever? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
the same chart, but it's telling multiple stories. So it goes back to the point that I raised earlier, is all this AI thing is going to make us even busier. It definitely makes our life better, but it doesn't make our life any easier. Right now, when I can easily generate a proposal in split seconds nowadays, but now I have to spend more time to think about, if I have 5 competitors and all of them know how to use ChatGPT. Everybody's proposal is going to look the same, right? When I tender a project,
Mm-hmm.
then I have to think about some other factors. So who will need this project the most? What is the best price to pitch? Who is the best person to speak to? What is the stories and blah 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 blah. Instead of just compared to the past, say, all right, let's go in with the lowest price, and then with the thickest proposal. Because in the past, right, even in our academics project as well, the thicker the proposal, it appears to the lecturers that, oh, this guy has put in a lot of work, man. Even if the work itself, the quality is not so good, but the effort worth an A. But nowadays, everybody proposal is this thick. And then what are you going to
Yeah.
compete on? Are you going to compete on who has a thinner proposal, or who has the best words? And I'm sure that you remember the times when we write papers, we have to go through a lot of thesaurus as well, just to find the best word, trying to use passive voice, third party angles and stuff. Yeah, all this is become irrelevant now. And all the old skill sets that we used to live on, we have to find new angles and yeah, start over again.
Yeah. Okay. Just not noticing we're almost at the hour. This thing's
Yeah,
moving very fast.
I talk
Uh,
too much.
and no, it's good. We have to save some for the next chat. Let's talk a little bit about, without getting too heavy on kind of the architecture of
Yeah.
these models and why it's been so revolutionary. Obviously, NLP and computer vision have been around for a while. We use, CNNs and all these other things. And then you have these transformers. I think that's the big story. As a practitioner, can you share a little bit of why this has been, at least for you, quite a game changer? Because obviously, I don't think people have not wanted to come up with like intelligent chatbots, right? But for some reason, it's been elusive. And then suddenly these technologies arrive. And also on the image generation side, that's also been interesting, right? How Midjourney and Stable Diffusion have basically changed the game in terms of, generating images as opposed to prior frameworks. Anything you can share on that?
I'll give a bit of background on the AI in the past, and some of the things that people might not have noticed is for the past few generations of AI, it has always been human versus human. That means, for example, let's say we start with the very first, the Enigma machines, Alan Turing, that sort of stories. Is he's using AI to crack a rules that is defined by the human, right? No matter what, that is still something. It's not natural. That means those sort of the German armies, whatever they have used, right? The code words or whatever. I don't want to go into the details of the animal machine, but you just have to picture this. Those are something that is a human against another human, right? It's
Mm,
just the way that we don't know something happens in between. Okay. And then fast forward, we have things like Deep Blue, we have AlphaGo, we have like the AI that can beat Dota, for example. Those are also humans against human. It's just that somebody invented this game called chess. All right. So let's try to use some methods to break the game within its own boundary. So the actual limits is always has always been the computational power. Yeah, and if you look at like Go, it's the same thing. It's just that it's a chessboard that is a lot bigger. So before that, it was computational impossible. So the feeling is a little bit like social engineering. So the best way to hack a password is not brute force. It's actually go and make friends or go into the organization, look around, look at some post-it sticky notes on the on the monitor. You'll definitely find something that's more interesting, and it's a lot easier than brute force or using some algorithms to hack into the database. And then only when it comes to the most recent one, we make some changes on the model itself. Andrew say this a lot as well. So we have been moving from a model-centric approach to now a data-centric approach. So we start to be able to put more emphasis on the data. So instead of just counting how many times this word appear, how many times that word appear, oh, this is a stop word, let's forget about it. And sometimes we know that stop words or adverbs, those sort of things, they play a role. It's just that back then we don't have the computational power, we don't have the capacity to represent these things mathematically, so we have no choice but to discard them. And now we have the ability to store this information, we have the ability to calculate them because of the dimensions and the transformer models, etc. Then it start to enable us to do newer applications.
mm,
And I think what I personally like about what Andrew has said on the AI is a new electricity is that go back to my theory on the physical compression, right? When I'm sure that I'm not that excited when I have a transition from a phone set time to a mobile phone, and then 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. And especially from 4G to 5G, I'm probably one of the most boring guy in the room. It's like, okay, faster internet, so what? But of course, when it comes to business, we really know that there are some things that you cannot do without 5G, right? So same thing, like nowadays, a lot of applications, let's say you want to modify your a photo that you have taken on the spot, you want to remove some random dudes from the background, then you have to send this to the server, get some response, and do some image adjustment on the spot. And that's relying on the infrastructure of the telecommunications and also the computational power of your servers, sitting somewhere. So this has made things a lot more interesting, and it has opened it's not a big door for us to for computers to know more about human. Definitely not, because it's just a very minor steps that, oh, we finally able to represent this in, embedding, and manage to model the relationships between words, rather than just look at a document as a bunch of text randomly happens to come into the same document by chance.
Mm.
And I think this is the real meaning. I'm trying my best to explain in a layman way.
Yeah,
Yeah, hope.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the way we interact with these models very different. Obviously, we're used to AI that interprets data, but not AI that creates data. I think that's a big
Yeah.
change in pace, right? From a from a business standpoint, like you've encountered a lot of business people, how do you feel that they will react to kind of like this? Because maybe we've been using simple statistical methods forever, right? Regressions, clustering.
Yeah.
These are all very interpretative. Okay, well, I need a forecast. Here's the data. Here, okay, here are the coefficients. But generative AI doesn't even care about that, or at least the users don't care. They just say, okay, I need
Yeah.
a picture of a cat. I'll get a cat. So how does that change things in your view in terms of how we interact with AI?
I think that's a good question, and a lot of the heavy duty jobs has to come back to people like us who happens to know a bit of business, who happens to be in the business field, and we have enough technical knowledge to do some magic and do some wonders. Because I'm not saying that most business people they don't know technology, but they don't know enough to be able to do some magics, right? You have to know to have certain level of understanding when it comes to coding, when it comes to GAN. And if you look at the things that happened in the past 3 to 5 years, most people they still don't care about data. I mean, I'm sure that when you go to like Teradata, that sort of things, the first slide that they show you will be data silos, right? Everybody just have data silos. Yeah. So what am I going to do about it? The big data guy will say, oh, you need to build a data lake house, and then pour all of them together so that you can get some insights or better insights. Yeah, but at the end of the day, most of the so-called insights are just correlations, because A happens and then you see the B goes up, B goes down, that sort of things. So I think, yeah, there are plenty of opportunities for people like you and me and people who are watching this, because but the most expensive cost is always the education. Yeah. So if we can find a few angles, work together, educate those business people, yeah, we can do a lot of great things.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we should wrap up now, and I'd love to
Sure.
have you on another chat. What would you want to share for maybe for two audiences, right? The first audience is the professionals,
Yeah.
or people we've been working with, analytics people. How do you want them to see this new trend in AI? And second would be more of the wider audience, the business people, marketing people. How do you think they should, appreciate this new trend in AI, and as opposed to kind of analytics?
I don't like to change people' point of view, right? Because that will be the hardest thing to do in the world. But I do hope that business people can take this opportunity to start to see data differently, because IT department has always been the cost center. So if they can start to look at them differently and see them as a not just a cost center, but maybe a profit center, and how you can use your data creatively in the workflow, and then in the organizations. Of course, 80/20 rules, right? You don't start to involve 80% of the people. Just find one or two departments that seems a bit idling, a bit boring, but you can't, yeah, just give them something to do, and you will start to see some good things. And then for techies, for analytics people like us, I think the easiest mistake to make is, like, at least I always remind myself, is no matter how good or how easy those things are, always make sure that you stay hands-on. Yeah, don't let it drift, because with this AI era, it's very easy to let things slip, and then you might not be able to catch up. Yeah, like I do my best to catch up with all the AI tools that's available out there, but it's really tough. There are like different, like maybe 3 4 thousand different type of tools out there, but at least make sure that you understand the root cause of the problems that they are solving. Like why do we need ChatGPT? Okay, why do we need a language model, and why is people like Facebook, they are open sourcing it? And I saw some funny Indian news the other day that talk about ChatGPT is facing a bankruptcy, etc. That sort of
Yeah,
things.
it's interesting.
That's a news for another day. Like, I mean, mathematically, that things doesn't even work, right? Microsoft invested 100 billion, 10 billion in open AI, and even if they have spent half of it, they still got 5 billion in the bank, and
Yep.
700,000 a day can last them for, I don't know, 15, 20 years at least. So yeah, it's a funny thing.
Maybe
And
it's
then
another one of those clickbait headlines because
yeah,
people wanna, they just
and
want them
then
to fail.
and then they definitely need to start to look into things like some I think I always say this back in the days we do Coronatracker. I don't believe in hard skills or soft skills. It's just hard skills is something that can be quantified. You can ask them to sit down for an exam, and soft skills are those that you can't. So I would rather call it like technical skills and business skills. And yeah, it's always good to see. It's always easy for techies to learn some business skills, some communication skills, tell better stories, and yeah, help the business people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's good for our first chat,
But yep.
Dr. Lau. I'm looking forward to having you again. And by the way, do you want to mention anything about? Do you have any upcoming programs or any training that you're marketing at this
It's
point?
okay. We keep it for next time. Maybe I'm looking forward to visit Philippines soon.
Oh, likewise, yeah. And maybe
Yeah,
we do a swap. I can come to KL
exactly.
or
Yeah.
say or Singapore, wherever you may be at the moment.
Yeah, we can meet in the middle, like what we have planned before.
Or we can meet in the Spratly Islands in the middle.
Certainly. Yeah.
All right. Okay,
All
thanks a
right.
lot, Dr. Lau. I
All
hope to
right.
see
Thank
you
you.
again
Thanks,
in
Dominic.
another episode.
All right. Bye.